Well, now that it's 6:30, we'll let people keep filtering in, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of kick us off for our first session of the FY24 SHLA program. Welcome to everybody who is here and everybody who's new, everybody who's returned to the program. We're so happy to have you all here. My name is Annalise Schrader. I'll be moderating all of the sessions for this year. If you ever have any questions, you can just email outreach@swe.org. I'll type that in the chat now. If you ever have any questions, you can reach me there. So some just like quick housekeeping things before I hand it over to our speaker. All of you should have received a link to the Google Classroom. If you're having any issues getting logged in, please contact me through that outreach email, and I can help get things sorted out with you, because all of the information for this year's program is going to be located in there. All of the session dates, links to things, knowledge checks, post-event surveys, all of that will be in there. Every session is going to be recorded this year, and they will all be posted on our private YouTube playlist for you guys to view afterwards. And then there'll be knowledge checks and surveys for each session. So that's pretty much all of like the main stuff for the course. It's very similar to last year if you were a part of the program last year, but pretty much everything is already laid out on the Google Classroom. So always make sure to check there if you have any questions, and then reach out to me. But and I'm gonna, before I forget, our sponsors for this year, we have Honda and Start Small. So, you know, give some snaps and claps for them. They help make all of this possible. And then we're just gonna go ahead and move into our session tonight. Our speaker is Ayo Sokale, and just a little bit about her. She's a chartered civil engineer and project team manager for the Environment Agency in Eastern England. And she's also a keynote speaker, does a lot of speaking on the environment and sustainability. And she is here tonight to talk to us all about her personal STEM journey, college, and then kind of to be able to offer some insights for all of you on your STEM journeys. And so Ayo, I'm going to go ahead and hand it to you.
Thank you, Annalise. I'm super excited to be with you all at the Society for Women Engineers SHLA program. I think it's going to be awesome. And I'm going to be talking to you all about living without limits and identifying your own STEM pathways. You are all at this exciting part of your careers where you've all opted to be here to be part of the High School Leadership Academy. So you're already on your STEM pathway. So I'm going to tell you about my pathway and hopefully help you decide what pathway best works for you. And I look forward to you guys paying attention and asking me loads of questions towards the end, because this is your time too. So I want you to get what you need to get out of it. But let me tell you a bit more about myself. Once upon a time, long ago, there was a young girl who witnessed an amazing feat. And that feat was the magic of civil engineering. Now, maybe I won't tell you a fairy tale today, but I'll certainly tell you the story of my very specific career path. And I'll stress this: everyone's path to STEM and engineering will be very different, but it's about finding the path that helps you get to where you want to be. So, to that introduction that I promised. I'm Ayo, and like Annalise said, I'm a chartered civil engineer, but it's a career that I chose actually at the grand old age of, drumroll please, come on. Thank you very much, Mary. At the grand old age of 9. So I started my STEM pathway at 9 when I decided civil engineering would be the tool that I would use to transform the world. I am now currently a chartered civil engineer, one of the youngest in the country, and I lead a team of project managers and engineers who work to deliver flood risk schemes across England, keeping people safe from flooding. But actually, I joined my organization as a graduate on a training agreement and worked up to this point in my career. So my path to engineering was what so many will call the traditional route, but I just simply call it the academic route. But like I said, again, everyone's pathway to STEM is different. My personal journey involves college or university, as we call it in the UK, and this is the way I went about it. So this is my approach to my journey. And I'm going to talk to you today about my personal journey, the various roles of an engineer and the roles I've taken, what I've done in my career so far. So the projects I worked on, some of them are really cool, and hopefully they will transcend location and you'll have heard about some of them. And then I'll talk about some of my favorite engineers and the work that they've done that still matters to us today in the world, such as Joseph Bazalgette and the work on the London sewers, and how this is technology that so many engineers around the globe have used and modelled to build their own infrastructure. I'll then talk about the various pathways to civil engineering. So I'll talk about apprenticeships, university, vocational routes, and I will talk about the big challenge facing engineers and STEM professionals for the future. Hopefully a challenge that you will be helpful and embark on a journey to help us all solve. So I'm a civil engineer, and I'm sure some of you are wondering, what exactly is a civil engineer? Well, the Institution of Civil Engineers, which is my professional body, the body that professionally qualifies civil engineers in the UK, is defined, well, as of 2007, their definition of civil engineering to be someone who takes the vital art, working with the great sources of power in nature for the wealth and well-being of the whole of society. And this is an important part to stress, that we civil engineers are working with the powers of nature, as many of us know, extreme as they can be, but for the well-being of all of society. So many of us, you've heard of STEM, you've heard of engineering, and maybe you think they're purely technical roles, but they're certainly not. They're roles done by people who want to change the world, and that is the heart of what an engineer is. That's what our professional code of conduct says, that we're about looking and acting in service of humanity. That's what engineers do. Now, we might do this in various different ways because it's a really broad title. You can see on my slides all the things that fall under the premise of civil engineering. And this is only a short, tiny amount of them that I've got on there, because civil engineers all work in different ways to meet these objectives of making society better. Some work on sustainability. Some transform people's lives by the built environment they interact with. So, for example, your house, the flat you're in, the building you're in right now, that's an engineer. The hospital that maybe you were born in, the school that you go to, the bridges that you use to cross to get to where you need to get to, the roads that your parents drive you on, maybe you drive yourself on, the trains you get, the airports you travel to, the energy that powers your home, your everything, your phone, your flood defenses that keep, some of you safe from flooding if you live in those areas. And of course, telecommunication networks that get signals to our phones and allow us to watch all our favorite TV shows. This is all civil engineering. So in the diagram, I try to stress the breadth of civil engineering, and it even breaks down further. Even if we just look at one of the branches on here, let's pick, for example, water management. In water management, you'll have hydraulic engineering, you'll have drainage engineering, river engineering, groundwater engineering, and personally, my favorite, what I do, flood and coastal risk management. So even in any one of these facets, there's so many different careers that stem within them. So for me, as an engineer who works for the Environment Agency in the UK, my job, just like your engineers, similarly in organizations such as the United States Army Corps of Engineers, is to protect people by reducing their flood risk. That's what I do. That's my bread and butter. That's my why. So I've kind of touched on that theme. Why? So why civil engineering? Well, I was inspired to become a civil engineer when I was 9, like I said, but really this started because I witnessed the power of engineering to change the world. Engineering is a super powerful tool, and it's one that can transform people's lives. And at the time, I was living in what we would call developing nation. And I saw how engineering could transform those communities, give people access to clean water, better infrastructure, which will ultimately change their lives. And as a young and impressionable person, I was so struck by the power that this could take a developing nation and make it more developed, something that would model a developed country. Countries like yours now, today, ones where we turn open our tap and we get fresh water, where we're able to travel down a highway with no thoughts at all. So observing firsthand how these feats of engineering could improve society and ultimately change people's lives inspired me to want to be a civil engineer. I wanted to be the kind of person who would wield the power to shape the world around me. And this is what I would go on to do in my career. So my very first project that would protect 5 homes from flooding, to then working on my second project that would protect 279 homes from flooding. See, I'm going up in scale and numbers. To then working on massive mega schemes like, on my slide here, you can see the Thames Barrier. Some of you may know this if you've seen iconic pictures of London. This is a very big feature. You get it on postcards. Well, I worked on this. I worked on the Thames Barrier, which is one of the UK's top 40 national infrastructure projects. And it's the world's largest flood risk management scheme in the whole world. So I was working on this project that looked at 170 kilometers length, the Thames estuary. So this includes the famous Thames Barrier on my slide, but also 350 kilometers of flood walls, embankments, barriers, pumping stations and floodgates, doing all the work that would be required to keep people safe. So as an engineer, that would have meant doing structural investigations to make sure, first of all, the asset that's been built is still safe, doing planning works to make sure that when we're building these things, that they go through the process of getting legal permission. So we're not doing things illegally. If you've ever had a neighbor who's been building something and then making your parents really miffed because they haven't had planning. So making sure we have planning, doing the design and maintenance as well, because a huge part of being an engineer isn't just building an asset, it's maintaining it over long term. And all of this work would cost £200 billion, but it would protect 1.25 million people. So 1.25 million people would not have to experience their home being flooded, would not have to experience being evacuated and losing all their goods and belongings overnight. This was my why, something that I'd experienced myself as a child, growing up in Nigeria, experiencing very extreme flooding and witnessing people lose their lives. I was then able to turn it full circle and be the person standing in between someone losing their home and all their belongings overnight to protecting them and giving them that assurance and safety. So that's why I love being a civil engineer working on flood risk. That's why I love my job. I see myself as a bit of a superhero. And I think, to be fair, when I look at all the incredible engineers that exist and all the incredible things they do, I think that's a status we definitely earn. But being an engineer for me is so cool because every day is different. Some days I'm looking at the communities I'm working in and I'm thinking about how I can get them the better outcome, protect more homes from flooding, improve the environment, even include things like ecology. How can we build more plants when we're doing a project to make sure that it's prettier, it's nicer, people have green spaces that we know are good for their well-being, as well as then coming up with ways that can make I was just muted. I've just unmuted myself. Can you hear me now? Thank you. So making sure that we're improving the environment by building trees and things that would improve the fauna around the area, because we know the green spaces makes us feel so much better. But actually, it's been out on site. Some of my best times in my career so far have been on site, on the ground, watching something get built, watching something that maybe I've designed, like my fish bus channel or my bridge in Oxford, that literally I sat at a desk like this on pen and paper, drawing and coming up with ideas from the ground up. And then I would be on site watching someone build my vision, build my ideas into reality. And that is just incredible. And that's what being an engineer is. It's transforming an idea, an inkling that you have in your mind, to something real that's manifested in concrete. And there's nothing more, I feel, rewarding than seeing that and then seeing people benefit from that. So that's one of the best things about my particular strand of engineering, is that I get to see the direct impact of my work in reducing the flood risk to people's lives and their homes. And it's been an incredible experience so far. But that's my engineering why. We all have to find our whys. And you are all at a very exciting stage of your life where there's so much to learn about yourselves and what you want. But first, you've got to know your why, because you've got to know what's motivating you and what you're going to do as a result of it. Many people have spoken about the importance of having a why. And it's something I wholeheartedly believe. If you know your why, as Nietzsche, one of my favorite authors, says, if you know your why, you can live the how. And this to me means if you know why you're doing something, when it gets challenging, you can live through it. If you know why you're doing something, when you find the subject difficult to study, you're going to be more motivated. If you know the why, when you don't feel like you want to get up and go to your classes, or you don't particularly feel like you can be bothered, that's going to be your motivation. The why helps you to do the how, the doing bit, but you have to know your why. It's going to be the bit that's going to help you live a life that really reflects your values and to be the change you want to see in the world. So how do we find our why? Because we know why is so important. It's a lens in which we see the world. I wear glasses or contacts, and this is the lens I see the world. That's my why. It allows me to see the world the way that allows me to focus appropriately so I can see everything. When you know your why, you can focus appropriately. It gives you a lens to see the world through. It gives you the sense of what is meaningful and purposeful. That meaning, that why will make you stronger. It will give you resilience in the challenges. And when you face those challenges, it will help you to reframe them as opportunities. So I would like you all to take a bit of an action from this conversation, because I don't want to just talk at you. This is your life. It's in your hands. I want you to reflect on what your whys are. First of all, I want you to think about a problem that you've seen in society that makes you sad and you really deeply want to change it. I want you to write down a piece of paper, a problem that you think is worthy of you. It's a big problem. You want to solve it. The bigger the problem, the more ambitious it seems, the better. You need something to aspire towards. The bigger you dream, the more you can achieve. In the words of Mary Poppins, if you wish for the stars, all you get are the stars, but we've got a whole new spin. If you wish for the heavens, you get the stars thrown in. And I won't sing it for you, even though it's very tempting, because it's past midnight where I'm at, and my neighbours may not be so pleased with me. But it's so important. That big vision, that's the first thing I want you to write down on your piece of paper. That big problem you want to solve. And then next, I want you to write down your strengths. What are the things that you individually are so good at? Something that your friends recommend, people tell you about it all the time. They say, maybe Annalise, you're so good at writing, or Mary, you're so engaging and enthusiastic. What are the things that people repeatedly say to you? Write that down. In fact, you can go further than that. You can speak to 5 people that you trust and ask them 5 things they think you're good at, and write them down. And now you have 25 strengths. And then I want you to select the ones that you like to use, the ones that you enjoy. For example, I could be a good speaker, but I may not enjoy it. That would then give me a sense of a strength, but not to something that I enjoy. So first you get 25 strengths, and then you highlight the ones that you enjoy. From that, I then want you to highlight your areas of interest. Now, this may seem less organized in related to the big problem and your strengths, but this is important because there's some things that you do innately, the things that you do and you research and you read and you go on a 2 a.m. rabbit hole on Google to learn about. What are those things that you're interested in? These are giving you little nudges towards where you want to be aligning your why to. So you write that on your piece of paper, your natural interests, things that you naturally would spend time on because you're curious about them. Then I want you to highlight what your area of influence is. And you may be thinking, I'm a student, I don't have one. No, we all do, believe me. So what is your area of influence? Is it your community? Is it your religious group? Is it your family? Is it your school group that you lead? Are you head of an engineering club, or are you a really popular person at school? That's your area of influence. Write that down. Now, this is going to start helping you to have a blueprint of what you're good at, what a problem is worthy of you, what you're interested in, and where you have the ability to influence the world around you. This gives you a map, a bit of a plan to start creating a vision of how you will contribute to the world and what your why will be. So this will help you make decisions, because engineers all throughout time have lived in this way. They've picked a problem worthy of them. They've said, wow, I don't like that that's happening, that topical issue, that thing that's happening in their society. And they said they're going to go about and solving it using their strengths, their interests, and their area of influence. So let me tell you a practical example of someone who did this, a famous civil engineer, one that is so well accoladed in our society today. That is Joseph Bazalgette, one of my favorite civil engineers. He had such a huge impact to the world. He solved a problem that he thought was worthy of him. He lived in the 18th century where people used to put their waste, their poo, to be more graphic, their pee, and put it straight in the river where people would then get their same drinking water out of. This meant disease was rife. It led to an epidemic of cholera and typhus, and huge amounts of London's population were dying. And more than that, maybe less than that actually, London smelt like a cesspit. It smelt like a living sewer because it had this river running through it, the River Thames, which was just full of human waste. Joseph Bazalgette was a young engineer at the time. He said, hell no, not on my watch. Absolutely not. He realized that his background, where he worked as a rail engineer, which is entirely unrelated, had given him particular skills, those strengths. He'd realized there was a problem that was so big and bad. It was, in fact, it was so bad that the MPs, who were the elected people, so the people meant to run the government, were so unable to deal with the stench coming from the River Thames that they were absconding London. They were leaving London. They were saying London can be left, the whole city just left, to leave it alone. It's so bad, we're not going to go there. So he picked the problem. He looked at his strengths. He had worked in railways before, and that had given him a particular skill set. And he realized that he could use this skill set to solve this problem. So in his solution, he designed London's underground sewers. 82 miles length of sewers that would then help remove contaminated waters through his sewer system away from London, and that would lead to a drop in death of cholera. He would save huge number of people's lives and set a precedent where we're still using his sewer system today in 2023. It's just been replaced in 200 years, the work this one engineer did. That's the power of an individual who knows what their strength is, and they've picked a problem worthy of them that's aligned with their interest, and they've thought about their area of influence. He had a huge impact on the public issue of the day. And you may be thinking, okay, there's so many engineers, the world is built. You have cars, you have infrastructure, you have phones, everything's done. What am I meant to do? Well, believe me, there are huge challenges facing us that require STEM thinkers, STEM professionals and engineers. I'm going to quote our past president of my professional body, the Institution of Civil Engineers. He says, in a fantastic quote that I love, the engineer of the future has a multitude of challenges to step up to, challenges described in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. You might have heard of these. 17 goals to transform the world. Goals that would help us solve affordable and clean energy. We still need that. Goals that will help us solve climate change, a big challenge that we all know about. Goals such as innovation and infrastructure. We have a growing population where people are going to live. You know, goals such as sustainable cities, so that we're not just creating more waste. Goals that allow sustainable communities so that everyone can live together peacefully. Goals that will allow us to have clean water and sanitation. The world needs more STEM leaders. It needs more engineers, and it needs you. And there's not one type of engineer. You don't have to all be a Joseph Bazalgette with his skill set or look like him or be in the 18th century. You have to be you. Put those stereotypes away. An engineer is anyone who wants to do something worthy for other people, who wants to serve people. That's an engineer. That's a great engineer. And I think in this room, in this virtual room, I'm looking at some great engineers, people who want to make the world better, people who want to solve the biggest challenges of the day, people who are going to formulate solutions and answers to the questions that so many of us are asking ourselves. And to do this, we need a diverse ways of thinking. So every single one of you, regardless of what makes you different, you have to have a stake in this conversation. You can be an engineer too. You can be a scientist too. You can be a STEM professional. Just looking at the stats of climate change currently are horrifying. So we need to all come together and try and solve it. And there's so many ways to go about solving these problems. I've gone one particular way. I did secondary school, so that's high school. Then I went to sixth form, which I guess will be just a pre-college step. I don't know what the equivalent is in the US. And then I went to college, or we call it university here. So that was the route I took, where I studied my STEM subjects such as maths, further maths, physics, chemistry, geography, design, technology, as well as then some subjects I just thought were fascinating, like design, like geography or sociology or Spanish. But I would also do some really cool courses that would support me. And this is where it's important to think about things that you're just interested in. I do courses on entrepreneurial engineering, where I'd learned to code when I was 14, and that would teach me some amazing skills. I would go and study all kinds of engineering on my summers at Imperial London College, one of our leading universities in the UK. And I learned so much. I do work experience that give me a breadth of understanding about what engineers think about. But really, the important part was finding a path that worked for me. I found secondary school, sixth form, university worked for me, and left university with a master's degree in civil and coastal engineering. But that's just one way. That was my way. Your way may look different. For example, there are vocational courses you can do. You can do apprenticeships. They're very common now. They're becoming even more popular because you get to get a qualification without paying huge university college fees. And you still end up with equivalent qualifications at the end of the day, because a lot of these organizations will sponsor you through it, and you'll get the same qualifications as someone who went straight to university or college. So really think about what works for you. Is it doing an apprenticeship where you do it full time and you have a permanent job and you're recognized in industry with a qualification and no student debt? Or is it doing the academic route still? Or is it doing the vocational route where you balance studying and working at the same time? There's so many routes open to you. I think it's worth being curious and thinking about what your learning style is and where your strengths lie, and also your personal living situation. Now, I think it's really important to give you some good advice, some honest advice, some advice that's been so important in my career. If you're interested in a career in STEM and you want to be an engineer or a scientist, this is the bit of advice I would say. If I could go back to myself at 18, I would. Consider the right pathway for you. I have so many people who are such dear friends of mine who went in to study STEM, but they picked the wrong pathway and they didn't enjoy it. And therefore they thought STEM isn't for you. STEM is for everyone. You just have to find the way that works for your learning style. For me, I'm dyslexic, so I love finding a way that means audiobooks or things like that. Find routes that work for you, things that help you learn better. Consider, is it university? Is it apprenticeships? And create a plan. This will help you be clear on how you're going to go about achieving what you want to achieve. And number two, I think it's so important to get practical experience. Being passionate about things is a great start, but you need to develop by doing. So things like internships or shadowing are hugely valuable. So think about it. Could you email a local consultancy? Could you go and email a hospital? Can I come shadow? Can I come volunteer to get the experience you need? This experience is not just to start the journey to being professional, it's to help you gather data. You're at this exciting part of your life, and there's so many options. And in fact, based on where we are in history, it feels to me like there are more options than there ever been before. So you get to gather data about what excites you, what you're interested in, what will be good for you. And that data will help you make decisions. So going out there and getting that experience and getting that data will help feed into your matrix in your mind and say, actually, I like this. I don't like this. I'd like to do more of this. I'd like to study this. It's really important to go and get that data. Now, we have to ask questions, right? You don't want to ever stop learning. To be an engineer, to be a scientist, it's about looking at the world around you. We look at the world around us and we make observations. Scientists then test those observations. So they observe, they make a hypothesis, they test a hypothesis, and then that is how scientific theories come about. It's by that curiosity, that questioning. Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? Why does that reaction cause that reaction? Why does XYZ happen? It's that what if thinking. It's that questioning that's ultimately so essential to being a STEM professional. The desire to know, to learn, to observe, to solve problems, to think big, to think about outcomes. That's what you've got to be about. To succeed, you've got to raise your aspirations, right? The bigger the goal, like I said, in Mary Poppins' words, the bigger the goal, the better chance you have of success. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually easier to go for a massive goal than it is for a tiny one. Because even when you don't quite make that massive goal, let's say you're 18 now and you say, I want to be an astronaut and I want to be in space by the age of 30, and you miss it, but you end up like solving a big problem and you work for NASA and you're an incredible engineer. Even when you don't hit those goals, because you were aiming for such a massive goal, what you end up hitting is so extraordinary anyway. And you don't know what's possible. You just don't. When you put 100% focus and you align things with the things that you're good at and you're interested in, you don't know how far you can go. So raise those aspirations. If you think you want this, I tell you, dial it up 100, 10x that goal. Because in that journey of raising those aspirations, you're going to get some successful experience. You're going to build competence. But to raise your aspirations, it means often we have to do something scary. Initially, it's out of our comfort zone, right? We know what we already know, but to do something we've never done before, that's scary. But to have a different life, to do something tomorrow that you've never done before, you have to do something scary today, something that's out of your comfort zone. That could be applying for an internship. That could be saying, hell yeah, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to be a STEM professional. I'm going to go and set myself up to have a successful experience. That's part of developing yourself. And then in having that successful experience, once you've gone out of your comfort zone to do that thing, you've got to set yourself up to be successful in it. So let's say you go on an internship. You got to go and speak to the people doing the internship saying, what are your indicators of my success? You've got to set yourself with some parameters that you know you're being measured on so that you can then be successful in that experience. You know what you need to do to win. You can pick up some mentors saying, I'm doing these actions. I would like someone who knows a bit more about XYZ to give me insight. So you go to people saying, I've done this. This is the actions I've already taken. Now, can you help me with this bit? That's going to help you to be successful in the experiences you're going for. Because now you know what's required to be successful. And now you have support to help you be even more successful in the actions you're already taking. In that successful experience, you're going to get more competent. That means you're going to know more. You're going to have more skills, more knowledge, and more experience. That's competence. From that competence, you know what happens? You get confident. Because every time that you know what you know, you get confident. It's like when you're explaining a very basic math principle that you once had to master. Let's say you were in grade 8, but now you're in grade 11 and you know that knowledge and you can go back to the grade 8 and say, this is how to do it, because you are competent and therefore you are confident. But this is a continuous program. We're always going to be doing scary things, getting out of our zone of comfort, getting a successful experience, building competence to give us confidence. And we're going to continuously be raising our aspirations as we do that. And as we do that, it means ultimately we get to a place where we could have never imagined. And we're doing the most incredible things. But it all starts without holding ourselves back. We've got to stop holding ourselves back and say, this is what I want, and I'm committing to this journey. The future of engineering, of civilization, of science, of technology, of engineering, of maths, it relies with new talent, brilliant minds, people who are passionate, who are going to help us overcome the biggest challenges of our day. And our present day challenges, like climate change, they're pretty complex. But people like you are going to be responsible for coming up with a solution to the world's biggest problems. Now, the more of you we have, the better to take on this challenge. So I want to ask you, who of you in this room today will join me for the most exciting career in the world, a career in STEM? Will you join me on this amazing path? Now I'm so excited to hear your questions and read the chat and hear all that you have to say. Yes. Right. Yes. I'm loving the chat. Yes. Hell yes.
Thank you so much, Ayo. This was, like, first of all, just an amazing presentation. Yeah, right now we're going to move into the questions portion of this. So if you have a question, anybody who's attending this, you can either type it in the chat or you can raise your hand, and then, like, feel free, after you've raised your hand and we've called on you, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. But yeah, anybody, any questions you got, go ahead, throw them in the chat. Gotta scroll down. Okay. Amazing. So many yeses. I was like, gotta get to the bottom.
I'm loving the yeses.
Yeah. Anybody, any questions you have? Okay. Caitlin, I see you have your hand up. You can unmute yourself and ask.
What's the greatest challenge you faced in your journey in civil engineering?
I think a lot of the challenges I faced were, first of all, self-belief. A lot of us, we talk about, I don't know, you might have heard of it, imposter syndrome, right? Have you heard of it, Caitlin? Imposter syndrome? The idea that you're just not as good enough as you think. You're not good enough to be in the room. And that's a limiting self-belief. And it's one that will stop you from often going for opportunities. I know some incredible engineers who doubt themselves, and therefore they've not put themselves forward to lead on projects, to do really cool things. And I think that's really sad. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges myself and many engineers face, but it's one that you can overcome. And I certainly overcome it by building a new self-concept. So our imposter syndrome, that limiting belief, often is a result of our self-concept, how we see ourselves. But we can change at any time. So we can build a self-concept that's more expansive and open. One that says, I am Caitlin and I am really good at learning. That's a belief system that will help you when you approach things. I am Caitlin and I'm really good at picking up knowledge and teaching it to other people. That's a self-concept that allows you to grow and adapt. That's a self-concept that's more resilient and more flexible. So the key thing that was the antidote to dealing with this challenge was building a self-concept that allowed me to be more expansive and also had resilience built in. One that would allow me to make mistakes, because mistakes are a huge part of being an engineer and a scientist. We learn by trial and error. Some of the biggest solutions in the world have been developed by accident. Penicillin, for example. Some of the greatest scientists have been rather silly in their pursuits of discovering solutions, because that is a huge part of being a scientist. You're trying it and you're testing it. So it's also really important that your self-concept, that sense of who you are, isn't so fragile that it's impacted by errors. So you've got to be really robust to making mistakes and just getting along with it. So your self-concept is going to be one that's growth orientated. I learn from my mistakes. I try and I test it. I work well with my colleagues to collaborate to form solutions. So that's one of the biggest challenges I faced, and that's how I've overcome it. And hopefully, if you learn how to overcome it now, you may not even have the challenge at all, which will be even better.
Perfect. We have a question in the chat from Ren. They asked, how do I find opportunities near me? Do you have any tips or kind of what did you do to help connect yourself?
Back in my time, it was more yellow pages where you could literally look at it. But in fact, you probably have something that's one up on me now. You have LinkedIn. So the people I did my internship as a student when I was about 14, I still have them on LinkedIn. So in fact, you could probably go on LinkedIn right now, go into your area, search engineering firms and find what's local. And that would be the equivalent of what I did with my yellow pages. And then I would email everyone. Well, I think I wrote letters to everyone actually, but you could do the equivalent now and email everyone. A personal message saying, I've looked to your company, I'm interested in your company, my name's Olivia, I've got XYZ experience, I'm really interested in this particular field. I would love to support your organization in an internship for 2 weeks and learn XYZ. Could I come and have a conversation? Or could we have a Zoom call. Like that kind of structure, showing that you've done work and due diligence on them, you know what they do, your interests align, and you're really specific about what you want to get out of it. That makes it much easier for them to also pull you on board, because they have to do less prep to come up with a package of work for you to do. And it proves that you're going to be useful to them. If you send a message like that, most people will approach you with positive outcome, like, yeah, sure, come have a chat with us. Or maybe we can't do 2 weeks, but we'll give you a week, and maybe come back again in a couple of months' time, or come back over winter break or something like that. So definitely use LinkedIn, area, company, do the research of them, send very personalized initial emails. And when you can, if you see a hiring manager, give them a call. People are shocked today when they get a call. When I get a call, I'm pretty warm, because I'm like, oh, okay. And if they've done some due diligence and they know a bit about the company and what we do, and they want a specific experience, it's brilliant. So definitely do that. Use LinkedIn area, and I guess the equivalent of what I did in my Yellow Pages.
Really, really helpful advice. I always forget that, like, I mean, you can really look at LinkedIn at any point in time. So that's a great resource for all of you that are, even though you're in high school, you should definitely use it. Olivia, I see that your hand's up. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi. I was wondering what your process was to deciding which college was going to be best for you.
I actually picked based on slightly different metrics than you might consider. A lot of people picked on going to the highest ranked university, or what we call in the UK a Russell Brand university. But I picked based on where I think I would learn the best, and also what culture suited me. So I went to Plymouth University in the Southwest. Now, that university is a campus-based university. It's based right next to the sea, which is where my hometown's like. It's very quiet. It's very culturally rural. So I picked something that I knew would suit my personality a lot more. I had the option to go to a higher ranked university, Manchester University, which many people recognize as Manchester University, right? It's a Russell Brand university. But in the middle of the city, dispersed, and highly, like, central business districts are highly loud, very fragmented, and not so much of a university feel. So one of the really important things I would stress, academic results is really important. You want a university that has good lecturers, good research abilities, but you really want a place where you will thrive. So it's really important to consider this. A lot of people will not advise this. They will advise all the academic points to look at, but find a place that you will thrive. You're the one studying there. You're the one who's going to have that experience. Is it going to give you the college experience that you want? Is it going to be worth it? Because university/college is more than just the academic results you get. It's the networks you have. I still meet some of the same engineers I studied with today. We work together on projects. So it's really important to think about a place that you'll enjoy the experience, you'll build a great network, and you'll have a foundation for a career. And also, you want to pick a university that is academically within your wheelhouse. So many people stretch themselves to get, and this is rich for the stars and beyond, like Mary Poppins says, but pick a space where it isn't too much of an academic stretch. For example, I have friends who went to study at the highest ranked university. So we went to the same school. They went to an Imperial or an Oxbridge. And then because it was so academically robust and they were always competing, and they went from being good in their class when we went to an all-girls school to struggling a bit more at an Oxbridge or an Imperial, it took their passion for STEM away because they felt like they couldn't keep up. You want a space where you're able to keep up with everyone, and there isn't that big discrepancy, and isn't too much of a strain to keep up with the medium or the majority of the group, the cohort. You want to be in a certain group in the middle of that. So there isn't a strain. That gap can be demoralizing, and often I feel it stops a lot of great engineers from actually having careers as engineers. They'll study engineering and they'll be burnt out from the struggle of getting the degree or the qualification, and then they'll leave it. So 2 bits of advice I think is so important and so underrated and not spoken about enough. Pick a space that gives you the experience that you want to have. Is it good? Do you have hobbies? Is it that you want to live by the sea? Is it a campus? And then secondary, make sure that it's academically not too much of a stretch, because that is important to make sure that the passion for STEM stays. And there's great research on this as well that supports this, such as David Goliath, a book written by Malcolm Gladwell.
I think that's like such amazing advice, Io. And I feel like it's not talked about enough about like how much you just as a person need to be happy to maintain focus in your work and your passion. So I think that's super helpful. We have a question in the chat from Molly. She asked, what kind of experience did you gain before entering your field besides college or university? Like I know you mentioned that middle space between basically high school, secondary school, and university.
Yeah, so I probably had more experience than most people, to be fair, because I picked my career at the age of 9. So that meant I, had more time to think about it. So I started doing courses because I couldn't get an internship when I was about 11. I think I tried to get an internship at 11 and no one was having it, which is fair enough. But I started doing like courses. So I'd go to colleges that were all offering days for students to come in, or weekends or summer workshops. I applied for every single one. I did one at Imperial, at Strathclyde, at even like ones done by companies like who's like something to this, basically what you guys are doing, this leadership program. I did loads of things like this, sponsored by companies. And then I'd be precocious enough to write to those companies and beg them to give me internships. So I then start getting internships like by people I met on courses like this. And then I stopped working in this vein, and that would really help. So yeah, I did a lot of courses when about the gap from 11 to 14. And then I got my first internship after harassing them with many letters. But, be relentless. People eventually give up and they'll say, yeah, okay, come on. And then once you got on the door, you've got on the door. And once you got the one internship, it's much easier to get the next one. So then I got that at 14, and it was just by that point, once you got one, it snowballs from that. I started getting loads of experience. So I had a lot of experience before even heading to university, which made a difference.
Yeah, very helpful. We have another question in the chat, one from Becky. She asked, what are your thoughts on entering college undecided or wanting to go into engineering but not having a specific discipline?
I think going in where you don't know which discipline's fine. I know a lot of people do that and they still enjoy it. And you can have, even in the UK, we have generalized engineering courses where the first 2 years are undefined and you only define them in the last 2 years. For me, I'd kind of done something similar to that, but by my summer work experiences or my workshops. Like one particular summer, I studied every single facet of engineering for 6 weeks on a summer course. So basically doing a generalized program over the summer. So there's nothing wrong with that, because I think it's your career and it's a lot of investment. So you want to make sure that you pick something that suits you. And, I found even learning about the other parts of engineering really useful, because I'd already decided on civil engineering and maybe structural engineering. But by the time I'd done all the work experience, I decided structural engineering wasn't for me. And I picked civil. And then I got more work experience where I worked at a ports company, and I never knew anything about ports before. I'm just curious. It was curiosity, sheer curiosity. And I did my dissertation on it and I loved it. And then I specialized in water. And then that actually went full circle to going back to my original passion. So definitely do that, but you might find that you also naturally have tangents in your career anyway. And the one thing about civil engineering is you can go across the board, because once you're professional, you have the skills to apply. Like early in my career, I designed a bridge. I haven't designed a bridge for 7 years, but like you have the skills. You have a lot of skills when you're a professional engineer, and you have the ability to learn, because that's the other thing that you're actually getting from a college education is you're getting the ability to learn complex things, and you're getting engineering principles in their fundamental form, which you can then later apply to lots of different things. So yeah, that's not a bad thing. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that here in the United States, most engineering colleges let you come in undecided.
Oh, there we go.
During that first year, you're exposed to all the different types of engineering disciplines at that college. And then you decide towards the last month of your first year, which one you want to go into next.
That's brilliant. You guys have nailed it then.
Yeah. I think we have time for like one more question. There's one from Maya in the chat. And she asked, with AI taking over, do you think human civil engineers have a chance to compete? I feel like AI is a very popular subject right now. So just your thoughts, any insight on that?
Yeah, absolutely. we've been using what I studied artificial intelligence as part of my degree at university, even 7 years ago, learning about neural networks and coding. So maybe, I don't know, it didn't seem like a too far off a thing for me. But what I did find really interesting is that you always need engineers to validate and verify systems, because over now in big structural design, like groundworks and foundations, historically an engineer sat there with a calc sheet and did those calculations. And now we use software, we use LUSAS, we use MATLAB. But even though we use this incredible technology that's super powerful, it still needs to be validated and verified by professional engineers who understand the fundamental principles and can test and check it from fundamentals. So there's always going to be an engineer. And engineering is a systemizing, problem-solving thinking, which often, as you'll know, is a non-lateral thinking. So AI can be taught to think in through a neural network and machine learn, but the non-lateral thinking that engineers often apply is something that we haven't quite mastered in artificial intelligence yet. So I think actually when it comes to it, there are going to be some elements of engineering that are going to be very difficult to ever replace with artificial intelligence. So what I would say to anyone who's worried about that is to look at their career and look about the career path they're interested in and look at the very niches that are unreplaceable or have a particular unique application or utility that require human mind. That's going to be the key thing to think about to future-proof your career. But ultimately, you're an engineer, and everything you learn, you can apply somewhere else. As an engineer, I've had the most eclectic career. I've done the most eclectic things because engineering has so many applicable skills and you can do so many things. And right now, I run an AI startup because that's what engineers do. We do everything.
I think that is some like really great advice and insight to end our Q&A on. Thanks everybody for asking questions. Thank you so much, Ayo, for answering them. If in the chat you guys have questions that didn't get answered, you can email them to the outreach email and we can try to get you connected or get those questions answered. But I'm putting that email in the chat one more time just in case people don't have it, but it's outreach@SWE.org. And pretty much that's like the end of our session tonight. Thank you so much everybody for attending. This was like such a great way to kick off the SHLA year. Once again, I'll give a shout out to our sponsors, Honda and Start Small. They definitely helped make all this happen. And just as a reminder for everybody, this will be available on demand on YouTube after sometime within this week. And there is a post-event survey and a knowledge check that go along with this session. There's no pre-survey, so don't worry about that. There's just a post-event survey, and that's already linked to the Google Classroom. But if you got any questions, email outreach@SWE.org. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, everybody. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Ayo. It was fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm loving looking at the questions in the chat. There's just so many of them. I wish I could have gone through them all, but hopefully if you send them to me, I'll try and answer as many of them offline.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday evening.